PowerPoint. Okay, so let me now jump into character development. So everything that I covered in the first part on history, as well as some of what Stacey said, does come into character development. In terms of a specific approach, I've always, as a fictional history writer, made characters an extension of the history and the narratives I want to explore within any given story. And I believe this method would apply to both the protagonist and the protagonist. As an example, if you look at the movie Black Panther, in the standalone film, both T'Challa and Jedaka are culminations of historical ideologies of their fathers and the corresponding consequences of those ideologies. T'Challa is an isolationist, that's what he's born into. And Jedaka, on the other hand, is a liberationist, but he uses extreme means, right, at any cost, based on what his father experienced and how his father was polarized. Okay, and this is what actually leads to their conflict and the cause of Jobu's death. Right? So you can always weave in ideologies into your characters and bring that as a theme to life. Going a bit further back into history, I realized, and I came across this as I was writing this up, there actually exists a historical parallel between Jadaka and the real-life Hannibal Barca of North Africa in Carthage, and his struggles against the Roman Empire. So his family actually had a generational struggle. They were the generals of Carthage. His father Hamilcar was a general before him who fought in the previous wars against Rome, I think in the First and Second Punic Wars. So it became a general legacy. So you can use history and well-known facts to build legacies into your characters. Okay. Now, in creating a platform for your characters, it can be driven by a multitude of concerns. So you want to consider firstly, their impact on the world. And this is the consideration given to Superman, Russell Crowe's character in Gladiator, and Neo in The Matrix. You then have to consider the flip side, the impact of their world on them. This is what develops Lex Luthor, Batman, the main character in King of Heaven, and the main character in Wolf of Wall Street. The next thing I look at is the purpose of the story. Is it a biography like the one Jenny Lind is planning to write? Is it a documentary? Is it social criticism like the documentaries that Ava DuVernay does? Is it a fantasy adventure, a historical saga, science fiction, and alternate history? So the purpose of the story can inform how you develop your characters. Then what is their state of their existence? Are they laid back? Are they a polarized character? For example, again, the Joker in Dark Knight. No one knows his story before he appears on screen, but as soon as he appears on screen, he assumes the role of being a polarizing character to move the story forward. So that's his purpose, right? There can also be, depending on the social circumstances that you're writing in, which has become more of a trend in current times, you have to consider race and gender swapping. It's become a reality in order to accommodate the demand of different audiences and the change in demographics. If you're familiar with the series The Boys, the villain of this season was originally cast as a male, but they gender swapped and made the character a woman for relevance and female empowerment, which is commendable. You then also have to look the same way that race swapping happens. If you've watched the recent remake of the Dorothy story, The Wizard of Oz, that was done as Emerald City, the main character was Adria Arjona for the purpose of diversity representation and gender balance. You have Aya Cash, as I mentioned, as Clara Rissinger, Stormfront in The Boys. Jason Momoa as Arthur Carey in Aquaman, which was a diversity representation. The character was originally white. Naomi Harris as Moneypenny, and Jeffrey Wright as Felix Leiter in the recent James Bond series. That again achieves diversity and gender balance. Samuel Jackson as Nick Fury in the MCU movies. Nick Fury was originally a white character, but they changed it to convince Samuel Jackson to star in the movies. Now, in some cases, they will go the opposite way, where, and I'll quote two examples. The first being Gods of Egypt. The director behind Gods of Egypt and the producer chose their Caucasian cast on the argument that they needed Caucasian characters to act as leads to sell a movie about African gods. Now, I don't know if that was a cop out or it speaks about the state of Hollywood at the moment, but that's something that can be dissected later. Looking at the Hunger Games, the character of the book, Katniss Everdeen, was originally written as a black-skinned, olive-skinned 20, 25-year-old. Now, if you hear that description, you'll get the idea of a Pocahontas kind of character, but they chose Jennifer Lawrence for star power, and that's been a big controversy over fans of the series and detractors of the series on the internet, which has never been resolved by the series writer. There is also the controversy of her having borrowed the story originally from Battle Royale. If you ever watch the movie Battle Royale online, it's basically cookie cutter platform for what the first Hunger Games was. Too many similarities, so it is very questionable in that aspect. Political position. Characters can also be constructed from either politics of the real world, society they represent, or the politics of the fantasy world, regardless of the environment of the world. Characters can either develop within politics as a force for or against something. So capitalism and Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor is the embodiment of the maintenance of the white male capitalist power structure of today, pitted against the immigrant son and sole survivor of a dead planet that Superman comes to represent. So the struggle between Lex Luthor, representing capitalism, and Superman is basically the conflict between capitalism and natural law and society, right? That's the two sources of power, nature and capitalism, clashing against each other, and one is trying to wrest power away from the other. Okay? You then have the second approach is authoritarianism and cinematic vampirism. So in the recent history of movies and TV series, vampires for the most part have existed in secret authoritarian regimes that have been dictatorial and force vampires to live in secret with strict rules. Some vampires have rebelled against this and struggled to establish a new order. This has been at the center of movies like Interview with a Vampire, Queen of the Damned, the Blade Trilogy, Twilight series, and HBO's True Blood. In the political realm, you then have the left versus the right political seesaw. Many political economic dramas have not been able to avoid this dichotomy running through the core. 13 Days, Wall Street, and Wall Street Money Never Sleeps, and the TV series Scandal and House of Cards and Designated Survivor are all good examples of this. You then have the wild cards, which are fifth columnists. Modern political structure has been established solely around two camps, the left and the right, but every now and then a third unaligned force will emerge seeking to achieve what neither dominant side or the power structure wants. In Game of Thrones, this was represented by Varys, who wasn't concerned about who rules, but rather how they rule, and sometimes Tyrion Lannister. In the TV series V, both the original and the remake, it's represented by the secret faction aptly named the Fifth Column, which seeks coexisting with humans rather than dominating them. The Professor in Money Heist is also a representation of this, regardless of the extremes he goes to. Fifth columnists necessarily don't want to change or take over a system, they just want the system to work. Okay? Many code-based vigilantes adopt this at their center belief. Daredevil and Batman, two key examples. You then have anarchists who want to take down the political structure, and they're not confused with fifth columnists. The Joker in Dark Knight, Clyde Sheldon in Law Abiding Citizen, who can both be characterized by the phrase, some men just want to watch the world burn. Okay? You also then have, within the political realm, religious zealots. A classic example is the High Sparrow in Game of Thrones. And if you watch the recent series Messiah, the central character, who causes a lot of religious chaos. Now, with the current setup of the political economic establishment, a key driver of the way they operate is utility and the dogs of war. A lot of characters will arise from utility in response to an all-encompassing reality, existing with either a nightmare-scape, dystopian future, or alternate history, sci-fi-based worlds. Using utility and the dogs of war as a mechanism to create your characters, you can creatively use stereotypes to develop a rich tapestry and something new. If you're familiar with Guy Fawkes and The 5th of November, they used his story to develop the character V for Vendetta, who seeks revenge against shady scientists who misuse the power given to them to enact a threat against national security to gain undue wealth and power. Avatar is another good example. The off-world military operative, once he takes over, he forgets the democratic structure and just tries to bulldoze everything, believing might is right to achieve the end goal of the corporation, regardless of the politics and social dynamics in place. Another good example is Jason Bourne, both the movie and spy series born out of the Cold War, which talks about the pitfalls and the hidden illegal spy work network of Treadstone. Again, you have governments who claim to be democratic, claim to stand for civil and social rights, but they have all these spy organizations doing disgusting things behind the public lens. Another example is the movie Serenity. It's a sci-fi story where you have the coalition operative who will go to unfathomable lengths to protect the corporation's secrets. Now, that's looking at things from the politics and elements of the way the world operates. The next development block I use is genre influence. So when you look at genres, genres will influence the skill set, personal outlook, the functional environments, and background of different characters. If you look at the action genre, characters are easy military-oriented or spies, or social outliers, pariahs who have undergone intense and physical and psychological training, transforming them from ordinary citizens to functioning human weapons. Okay? The story is either centered around the character, developed as undergoing the transformation to become the weapon they're intended, or rejecting it. So predominantly, if they're undergoing the transformation, they will appear as robotic and on a journey of developing humanistic emotions, being able to become sociable. Jason Bourne is a clear example. He loses his memory and has to discover his humanity on the journey he goes through to find out who he really was. The movie Hannah, Salt, and The Long Kiss Goodnight are also good examples of this. Now, if they're going through the transformation, they will tend then to lose their taking for humanity, social liberties, and ability to engage. Examples of this include the character Wesley in the movie Wanted, Oliver and Thea Queen, and Sarah Lance in the TV series Arrow, Cyborg of the Justice League, Jennifer Garner in the movie Peppermints, Denai Guerrera as Michonne in The Walking Dead, and Rutina Wesley as Tara Thornton in True Blood. Okay? Another recent example is Javicia Leslie as Ryan Wilder in Bad Woman Season 2. The action comedy Mr. and Mrs. Smith applied to both scenarios. So they're trying to walk the ledge between both scenarios. The second genre I want to cover is romantic and dramatic comedies. So when using this as base for characters, you want to build your characters like a jigsaw puzzle, with one or two pieces allowing them to make an emotional connection either directly through facets of their own character or a physical link. Examples include Save the Last Dance, Julia Stiles and Sean Patrick Thomas. Two characters from different economic backgrounds on different sides of the racial divide in a semi-segregated high school who connect and establish a romantic relationship based on their ability to dance. T.I.'s movie ATL is another example of this with T.I. and Lauren London. And then the movie Wicker Park with Josh Hartnett and Dan Kruger. When it comes to the fantasy and sci-fi genre, you need to build the characters around a logically developed suspension of disbelief or reality that manifests either as a physical or non-physical trait, which helps them survive in their current world or in the new world they discover. It can also be developed as a status or lack of a status and provides them with an elevated position throughout the story. From a social perspective, this puts them at odds with the majority of rules and people within the world in question. So they're either privileged or underprivileged. Again, now vampire movies fit it. Sorry?
And Mutendei, we had our 2:30 mark. So
okay.
If you got a few more minutes to wrap it up, you can, or if not, we can revisit it in a Q&A segment, or if, I think if our guests, it's up to you how you want to do it.
Okay, this is just like the last minute. So 1 more minute, I should be done.
Okay.
Sweet. So key examples of sci-fi is Vin Diesel as Riddick in the Riddick trilogy. Is specialized in being the last known Furian, making the central character, given special abilities. Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn as the lost king of Gondor, the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Sarah Michelle Gellar as Buffy the Vampire Slayer, imbued with the powers of ancient vampire slayers, giving her magical ability to fight otherworldly creatures and demonkind. Yeah. And then to close it off, Arya Stark as pretty much the only tomboy that exists in the whole of Westeros. So that is the end.
Thank you, Mutendei. Thank you for sharing that.